Okay, good morning. We're going to do our seaming project today. So what you need to do this is your muslin and your see-through ruler and a pencil and some shears and some pins. The iron should be on, your machine should be ready. Here we go. First thing you're going to do is cut out 5 pieces of muslin, identical rectangles. You're going to need to line up the 12-inch side on the selvage edge. Remember selvage edge from last time? It's the tightly woven edges. And then the 6-inch side is the cut edge. Remember from last time? So we're going to use our see-through ruler to measure 12 inches down. We're going to make a little mark at 12. And then we're going to come over here and make little marks at 6. See how I'm lining it up? 6. 6. That's 2. 3. And we can only get 4 out of this piece we have left over from last time. That's okay. Now, you're going to connect. Draw your lines all the way down to 12. And then across. All right, now we got to cut these pieces out. So we're going to cut on our 12-inch line first. Remember, keep the shears on the table. We're not cutting in the air. That's why they have a bent handle. Cut right on the line. And then here. All right, there we go. Now I have 4, but you'll have 5. Let me throw this away. Okay, the next step is we're going to have a front and a back, so you know which is the inside of your garment and which is the outside. And because muslin is the same on both sides, you have to draw yourself a front. This is going to be the outside of your garment, and it doesn't matter what it is. It can be anything, stripes, polka dots. I'm going to make a chevron design. Just something really simple and quick. Now, see, this is going to be the front of my garment, and this is the inside. Now we know the difference. Okay, so for the first seam, which is a plain seam, you're going to pin your 2 fronts together, the outside edges. So you want them to kiss, so you're going to lay them over so that the 2 sides that we drew on are facing each other. And you're going to line up the edges. So, see if you can see this. We don't want them to be lined up this way, or this way, or this way, or this way. The edges have to match. They have to meet. They have to be the same. All right. Then we're going to pin them together about 1.5 inches apart, each pin. And the pins want to go in perpendicular to the line that you're sewing. Remember geometry from high school? Remember this is perpendicular? So the pins, you're going to sew this way, the pins have to go in this way. And they don't want to go in at an angle because then that gives the needle more chance to break. If they're in perpendicular, the needle will jump over them. And use the little pins rather than the bigger pins. The sewing machine doesn't like these big pins. Okay, So your piece should look like this, all pinned together on one side. Then we have to draw in our seam line. So you need your see-through ruler. You're going to measure 5/8 of an inch. So on the see-through ruler, each bold line is 1/2 inch. So you need one tiny square past the 1/2 inch line. So line it up on the 1/2 inch line and then do one tiny square past it and draw that. There, looks like this. Okay, so that's the seam line, that's the line you're going to sew on. Now we're going to go to the machine and we're going to sew this with a straight stitch that we learned last week, remember? Okay. Did you pause?
Rolling.
Okay. So remember when you sit down at your machine that your settings need to be for a straight stitch, the length wants to be 2.5 or 3, and your stitch selector needs to be on straight stitch. That's what we're doing. We're doing a regular plain seam with a regular straight stitch. The needle position wants to be in the middle and your tension needs to be about 4. So make sure your settings are correct first and then you can sew. Remember from last time, we're going to lower the needle into the fabric first and then we're going to lower the presser foot. Remember, we're going to back stitch and then complete the seam and then back stitch. So put your foot on your pressure foot, get it started with your hand wheel. So a few stitches forward and then reverse. And then keep going forward all the way to the end. And when you get to the end, remember to back stitch and then go off the edge. Then lift your presser foot up, gently pull your fabric away, cut the thread. And that's your plain seam. Now remember, we're going to go over here to the iron and we're going to press this open. I'm just going to be right here. Okay, so now you have to take your pins out. And then you're going to open your seam. You're going to cut the threads that were at the beginning. And you're going to gently, with your fingers, open that seam. Now with the iron, remember the steam button. You're going to have to press the steam button and just press it flat. That's all we're doing, is just pressing the seam flat, like this. Now you're done. That's your plain seam and you're done. This is what it looks like from the front. Okay, now you're going to go do another one of these. I'm only going to do the one, but you're going to practice this again. Go do another one, and then I'll show you how to do the next two, which are the flat fell seam and the French seam. Okay.
Action.
Okay, hopefully you're done with your two plain seams now, and we're going to go on to the next kind of seam, which is a flat fell seam, which we use for things like denim jeans. It's a stronger seam. If you're wearing jeans and you look at them, it's that inside seam on your leg. That is what were used when the cowboys rode the horses, because that's where the stress on the seam was. So we're going to sew that part twice. A flat fell seam is sewn twice, so there's 2 parts. This is the first part. Now remember, on your plain seams, you put the right sides of your fabrics together so that when you opened it up, it looked like this, and the outside of the 2 pieces were both on the outside and your seam is on the inside. But for a flat fell seam and a French seam, we're going to actually start by doing wrong sides together. I know, that sounds weird. Wrong sides together. So the 2 insides go together. Because remember, we're going to sew it twice. So put your 2 wrong sides together. And then everything else is the same. Line up the edges. Pin the seams together. So I'm going to do that. Make sure your pins are in perpendicular to the seam line. That one's a bit crooked. Let's fix those. Okay, and then you're going to draw on your 5/8 of an inch seam line. So remember, line it up by the bold line, and then scoot it in 1 more square past that. Draw your seam line on. There. Okay. Now we're going to sew this. Ready?
Action.
Okay. We're still using the straight stitch, so leave your settings the same. You're going to lower your needle in to the fabric first, then lower your presser foot, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to back stitch. We're going to sew all the way down. Back stitch. Sew off the edge, gently pull it away, cut your threads. All right, now we have to iron this.
Action.
Okay, so take your pins out just like you did before. Unfold your pieces. Cut your threads off. Like that. With your fingers, gently open up the seam, and then using your steam button, press that open. Okay. So it should look like this now. So this is our plain seam, and this is our flat fill seam. Step 1 is completed. Now we have to go back and do step 2.
Go.
Okay, here's step 2. Step 2, you get your scissors, your shears, sorry. You're going to cut away 1/2 of one side of the seam allowance. You don't have to measure, you don't have to draw, just eyeball it. And trim that down. That. Throw it away. Okay, so now we have a skinny side of the seam and a wide side of the seam. All right, we're going to go back to the iron and do a lot of folding and pressing. Bring your pins with you.
I didn't get the beginning of that. Say it again.
Okay, bring your pins with you. You'll need them.
Action.
Okay, here's the way that you fold the seam allowance to make a flat fill seam. The first thing you have to do is press the skinny side over to the wide side with your iron. Like that. Now, you're going to fold the wide side in half over to the seam that you sewed, over the skinny side. And then you're going to fold the whole thing over to the other side. So there's 2 folds. I'll show you again. You're going to fold the wide side in half over the skinny side, and then fold the whole thing over to the other side, like that. Got it? Now, while it's folded there, you're going to get your pins and pin it together. Pin it down just like that. Okay? So we're going to go back and we're going to do the whole seam and get it pinned down. There. Now, once it's pinned, you're going to press again so that it stays down while you are sewing it. And if your pins come out, just put them back in. Okay? Now, when we go to the sewing machine, we're going to sew right on this edge. Right here, right by the edge. As close to the edge as humanly possible. Right there. Okay? I know it's hard, but you can go slow and you can do this. All right, here we go.
Action.
All right. Okay, so you're going to put this underneath your foot and then lower your presser foot just like you did before. Right on the edge. And then lower your foot. Make sure that heads of the pins aren't too close. All right, and we're going to sew right down that side. There. All right, here we go. Don't forget to backstitch. And then backstitch. There we go. And it should look like that when you're done. so take your pins out. And I know we've already pressed this twice, but you're going to press it again. And done. That's your flat fell seam. Now, we're going to learn a French seam, and we're going to start it the same way as the flat fell seam, and there's also 2 parts, but it's a little different. So let's get ready for that.
Action.
Okay, so now we're going to learn the French seam. So we're going to start off the same way with our wrong sides together. Wrong sides together, okay, like that. And we're going to line up our edges just like we did before. We're going to pin the 2 pieces together just like we did before. The only difference is now, instead of drawing a 5/8 of an inch seam line, we're going to draw a 1/2 inch seam line. No, I lied. We're going to draw a 1/4 inch seam line. 1/4 inch, okay? So it's tiny. So it's just 2 little squares. Just 2 little squares. So right in the middle of the bold lines. 1/4 inch. Tiny, tiny, tiny. All right. There. That's how little a 1/4 of an inch seam line is. It's tiny. Okay, so now we're going to go sew that together.
Action.
Okay. So we're going to lower our needle in the fabric. We're going to lower the presser foot. We're going to backstitch first and sew all the way down. And the heads of your pins get in the way, and just move them. Okay. There we go. Now, it's off to the iron.
Go.
Okay, so we're going to cut our threads, take the pins out, like we did before. Oops. Unfold. I know this is hard, it's little, but try to get it open with your fingers first. Stretch it a little bit. And then use the steam button and press that tiny little seam open. Okay. Now we have more folding and pinning to do. So we're going to go back over there. That's where all my pins were.
You're filming.
Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're not going to trim this like we did the flat fell seam. We're just going to fold it in half. And we're going to make sure to get the seam right in the middle when we fold it. We don't want the seam rolled back like this. We want the seam in the middle. Right there. Can you see how the seam is in the middle? Okay, and then we're going to pin that seam shut. And we're going to sew it again, another seam, just like the flat fell seam. Now, the reason that you do a French seam, I should have told you earlier, is when you have very thin or see-through or fabrics that fray really badly, like chiffon, which is thin and see-through and frays badly, so that you don't have to serge the edges and you get a nice seam that is enclosed so nothing frays. Okay, now what we're going to do, now that everything is pinned, we're going to draw our new seam line on there, and this time it's going to be 1/2 inch. I misspoke earlier. The 1/2 inch seam is now. So line up on the first bold line. There's your 1/2 inch seam. And then you can go back to the iron and press this nice and flat before you sew it. Okay. All right, here's me pressing this flat one more time before I sew it. Oh, look, and I've knocked half my pins out. So repin. All right, now it's off to the machine to sew.
Now go.
Okay. All right, so we're going to put the fabric under the machine, lower your needle, just like we did before, lower your presser foot, do your back stitching, sew all the way down. Cut your threads. And now we have to go back to the iron.
Go.
Okay, now take your pins out. Cut your threads. And then you're going to open that seam and look, it's like magic. There's no little threads sticking out of your seam because the second time we sewed it was twice, the seam allowance was twice as wide as the first time we sewed it. So the first time you sewed it 1/4 inch, the second time you sewed it 1/2 inch, and it encloses all of those little frayed edges, and the seam is nice and neat. So we're going to fold it over, and you can then press the seam either to the right or to the left. It doesn't matter. If you were doing a whole garment like this, you'd press them all the same direction. Like that. And now you're done with your French seam. So the last thing you need to do on this project before you turn it in is get a pen and label it with plain seam. You're going to have 2 of those, so another plain seam, flat fell seam, French seam, and then put your name on it and turn it in. And you're done. Congratulations.